After that complete disaster that was the People's Crusade, ended in chaos and slaughter, the real army of the First Crusade started to show up in the East. And let me tell you, this was not some disorganized mob. This was the second wave. Thousands of professional, heavily armed knights and soldiers, led by some of the most powerful and, ambitious nobles in all of Western Europe.
I mean, on paper, you're looking at a Christian dream team, right? But this was no unified command structure, not even close. It was a shaky coalition, a real collection of intense rivals, each with their own armies, their own agendas, and some really deep-seated suspicions about one another. Their journey to Jerusalem, it was going to be defined just as much by their own internal battles as it was by their fight against the Seljuk Turks.
All right, so let's get into it. Let's meet the key players here. Because really, to understand this crusade, you first have to understand the powerful, often clashing personalities who were trying to lead the whole thing.
So first up, we've got Count Raymond of Toulouse. At 55 years old, he was kind of the elder statesman of the group. As the ruler of this huge, prosperous chunk of southern France, he was by far the wealthiest and most powerful of the senior leaders. You could also argue he was the most genuinely pious, and he was Pope Urban II's main guy, the one the Pope was really counting on to provide the worldly leadership for the whole expedition.
And look, the amount of money this guy had, it was just staggering. Get your head around this number. Over 31,000 gold solidi. That's how much he later offered other leaders to basically buy their loyalty. To put that in perspective for you, the English king at the same time was struggling to raise just 10,000 times silver marks, a sum worth way, way less. Raymond had the resources of a king, and believe me, he was not afraid to use them.
And this quote, man, it really gets to the heart of what was driving him. Unlike a lot of the others, Raymond seems to have truly seen this as, the final act of a deeply devout life. He literally handed over his vast lands to his son, packed up his wife, and set off, fully expecting this armed pilgrimage to be his last great service to God.
And then you have Bohemond, a Norman prince from southern Italy and pretty much the polar opposite of Raymond. Where Raymond was old and pious, Bohemond was this younger, land-hungry warrior whose reputation for ruthless ambition got to Constantinople long before he did.
Now here's the really crucial thing you have to understand about Bohemond. He wasn't just some random Western noble. He had spent years fighting the Byzantine Empire in Italy. So for the emperor in Constantinople, Alexius I Komnenos, Bohemond's arrival wasn't a relief, it was a full-blown five-alarm fire.
Yeah, the emperor was absolutely convinced Bohemond was just using this whole crusade thing as a cover story. His real goal? To grab Byzantine lands for himself and create his own kingdom. It was naked ambition just dressed up as a holy quest. And that suspicion was going to poison the relationship between the Crusaders and the Byzantines right from the very start.
Okay, so you've got these two massive egos, Raymond and Bohemond, heading straight for a collision. So who's supposed to keep the peace? Well, that job fell to Bishop Adhemar of Le Puy. He was the spiritual leader of the Crusade, handpicked by the Pope himself.
You see, Adhemar held this really unique position. As the papal legate, he was basically the Pope's man on the ground, his voice on the campaign. All the nobles respected him, and he was meant to be the glue holding this whole fragile alliance together, reminding them of their shared spiritual mission when their worldly ambitions started to get in the way.
And this quote, it's from the historian Jonathan Riley Smith. It perfectly foreshadows just how vital this guy Adhemar really was. As long as he was alive, he could navigate the rivalries and keep the committees of nobles moving forward. But without him, as we'll see, the leadership would just fall into total deadlock and chaos.
And it wasn't just them. The leadership council was absolutely packed with other major players. You had the pious and powerful Duke Godfrey of Bouillon from Lorraine. You also had Stephen of Blois, a rich count who, and you gotta love this, was apparently only there because his very formidable wife basically shamed him into going. Then there's Robert of Flanders, who actually had a decent relationship with the Byzantines, and Hugh of Vermandois, the French king's brother whose arrogance was pretty much legendary. It was an incredibly volatile mix of piety, pressure, and pure pride.
All right, so let's shift gears and talk about the journey itself. Because getting this collection of rival armies all the way from Western Europe to the heart of the Middle East was, without a doubt, one of the greatest logistical challenges of the entire medieval age.
I mean, we are talking about something like 60,000 people. That's knights, soldiers, clergy, and all their followers. Think about that. That's like picking up an entire large medieval city and moving it.
You have to feed it, supply it, and march it across thousands of kilometers of foreign and often pretty hostile land.
And here's the thing. They didn't all travel together in one big happy group. Not at all. Really reflecting their different homes and that lack of any central command, they all took separate routes. Godfrey marched his guys through Hungary. Raymond took a really tough path through Dalmatia. Meanwhile, Bohemond and his Normans sailed across the sea from Italy. And over several months, they all started to converge on one single glittering prize, the city of Constantinople.
And this brings us to the first huge test of the Crusade, this tense, dramatic meeting between the Crusader princes and the man who'd asked for their help in the first place, the Byzantine Emperor Alexius I.
So just for a second, try to put yourself in the emperor's shoes. What did he see when he looked out from his palace walls? Did he see saviors? Did he see allies? Or did he see something far, far more dangerous?
What did he see? He saw a full-blown catastrophe just waiting to happen. This massive, unpredictable foreign army was camped right outside his capital. And right there among them was his old archenemy, Bohemond, a man he was sure just wanted to carve out a new kingdom. He was rightly terrified they would conquer old Byzantine territory and just keep it for themselves. I mean, you can't blame him for being absolutely terrified. But Alexius, he was no fool. He was a master strategist. He knew he couldn't fight them, so he figured out a way to try and control them. As each of the leaders arrived, he'd isolate them from the others, using this clever mix of lavish gifts and not-so-subtle threats to get them to swear a solemn oath. The deal was pretty simple. Swear loyalty to me, promise to return any lands you conquer that used to belong to the empire, and in return, I'll give you supplies, guides, and military backup.
And this line, right here from one of the Crusader Chronicles, it tells you everything you need to know about their mindset. They agreed, sure, but their loyalty was completely conditional. If the emperor helps us, if he keeps his promises, then we'll give him back the cities. That one little word, if, it basically laid the foundation for all the profound distrust that would plague this entire campaign. Okay, so as the Crusaders finally get ready to cross into enemy territory, let's take a step back and do a quick assessment. What were the real strengths and, maybe more importantly, what were the critical weaknesses of this whole leadership group?
So on the one hand, you've got some serious strengths. We're talking decades of military experience, immense wealth, the spiritual authority of the Pope's personal representative, and a really powerful shared religious goal. But on the other hand, wow, their weaknesses were just as massive. You had these deep personal rivalries, totally conflicting ambitions for land and glory, a fundamental distrust of their supposed Byzantine allies, and, this is the big one, no single undisputed commander who could make a final call. So here they are. They're bound by this shaky oath to an emperor they don't trust and to rival princes they probably like even less. As they march towards their first great objective, the Seljuk capital of Nicaea, the biggest question of all isn't just can they beat the Turks, it's can they keep from tearing each other apart first?